Developed and produced by Konami in 1995, Suikoden is a role-playing game that tells the story of Tyr McDole, son of revered General Teo McDole, and the events that lead him to become the head of the Liberation Army. Forced to carry the burden of the Soul Eater rune and the mantle of leadership left by the death of Odessa Silverberg, the player assembles up to 108 characters, each with unique benefits that they bring the army in their campaign against the Scarlet Moon Empire. Suikoden is sourced largely from the classic 14th century novel Water Margin, one of the four great masterworks in Chinese fiction, along with Journey to the West, Dream of the Red Chamber, and Romance of the Three Kingdoms. These stories have undergone multiple adaptations and migrated into other nearby nations. In the work, 108 outlaws establish a base of operations and fight to help the oppressed against a corrupt government. The heroes come from all manner of backgrounds, from scholars to soldiers, most who have suffered in some way under the administration. It's not hard to see that same Robin Hood style in Suikoden, where the 108 Stars of Destiny are either witness to the inherent corruption in Barbarossa's empire or victim to it. This was just the first in 5 mainline Suikoden games. 2 and 3 are direct sequels taking place in years after the Scarlet Moon War, and 4 and 5 prequels to the events in Suikoden. In addition, the West saw releases of Suikoden Tactics and Suikoden Tierkeis, while Japan also got Genso Suikoden card stories and Genso Suikogaiden. Several of the series' core concepts are established in the original game, including the 108 Stars of Destiny, 27 True Runes, expanding bases, multiple endings based on completion, duels, tactical warfare, and combination attacks. The 90s represent a bit of a golden age for the JRPG, and Suikoden is fondly remembered among the console's best offerings in that department. Thoughts?
I wasn't going to make you re-record that last paragraph over your mispronunciation of the DS game because nobody knows how to pronounce it correctly.
Oh, Tierkeis?
It's Tierkeis, I think, is the actual way to pronounce it.
Okay.
I don't know. It's a weird hybrid of a Japanese and a German word. It doesn't make sense, much like the game itself.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about that one.
Now that is that a PSP release?
That was a Nintendo DS, I
okay.
believe. And it really did away with a lot of the mainstays of the Suikoden series.
The stuff that everyone loved and remembered and got them to play the games?
Right, combination attacks, collecting characters, characters that matter. They did away with a lot of good in the series.
So one of the things I love to assign my students, one of the projects I give them early on in the department, is the idea to understand and kind of correlate between an existing work and a game mechanic. And so I'll give them an assignment, be like, how would you convert like one of Grimm's fairy tales into a game? Like, how would you devise the mechanics that make that work?
Sure.
And that is, I think, hands down, one of the greatest things of Suikoden is the fact that they found a way to take a story with 108 characters and make something like coherent and fun and reasonable about it, because collecting them is a blast.
Sure. And they couldn't have given every single one of them a long side quest or long story event to recruit, because there's 108 of them. Some of the characters are just like, oh, hey, you want to come make a bath at my house? Sure, I would love to make a bath at your house.
I just do laundry. Why are you recruiting me?
I don't know. Come on here and wash these dishes.
Laundry. But yeah, and it's fun to see how they all fall together. Some of them are great at fighting. Some of them have combo attacks. Some of them you kind of get attached to, and some of them they just camp out in the base and you never really see them again. But
right.
They all contribute somehow.
Yeah, I think every game, there was that one character we got in the third or fourth town, Anil, the old lady who just gossips.
Yes.
I think every game has a character like that who serves literally no purpose. Even the gossip isn't helpful because there are other characters that help you recruit other characters in later series, and they're all investigator types. The gossip ladies have nothing to do with the game, but they're still there.
And they make for fun dialogue, and,
sure,
and sometimes that's all you really need out of some of them.
Right. And that's another kind of place where this game, I think, excels, and just the fun factor. You can talk to everybody, and everyone's a little silly, and we talk about some of the events that happen, and we kind of put our own spin on it and make it silly, but we don't really have to. The fact that Lead-On poisons you with tea and is all yes, I got them at last. I mean, that's funny in its own right.
Right.
Before we add in the TV jingle.
It's pleasantly insane. I can't think back to that scene without laughing.
Neither can I.
But Lead-On, the way he looks, that sniveling, weaselly portrait
right.
he got.
Right. No, the artist knew, and that's a good mark to the artist, is how much they clearly paid attention to the writing staff and how much they knew the characters going into writing it. And there's 108 of them, so that's even more so impressive when they nail everybody
Right.
perfectly with their character portraits.
And some are more fleshed out than others. Like, obviously, it's like, I'm the green blacksmith. I'm the second of, like, you need to find the orange blacksmith next.
Hey, at least the orange one had a pretty sweet beard.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like only the first two really look the same. The rest all have their own sort of...
more fleshed out. And they were kind of olderish looking as you went along, which made sense because it plays into that whole, like, the longer you're a blacksmith, the better you get at it, so the oldest one's going to be the best type thing.
Right.
Right. Is it Mace is the great one?
Mace, yeah.
Right.
The white blacksmith who, can give you that last level in your weapons, which is not important, but, it's nice to have anyways.
Completionists love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yo, what up?
Yeah, we're both kind of victim to that from time to time. So yeah, the characters are a blast to pull in, and there's a lot of them. You kind of went more like the magic route, and I could see watching the playthrough why that works out as well as it does.
Yeah. They definitely tuned it in later releases, but this is actually one of the only weak points I really hold for this game, because this is one of my favorite games, but one of the weak points is, like, I think they made magic too powerful. Mm-hmm. It's like, you see, like, during the final boss, if you go back and watch our videos, you'll notice that, like, I'm not in danger of losing.
Not really.
At any point in that fight. It's like, it's supposed to be the toughest fight in the game, and I don't even come close to losing. I think I lose one character to a death, and he's immediately back up.
This is not Mystic Quest. There's no matter how powerful you are, you can die in the fight if you
right.
Right.
Now, on the other hand of that, there is no retry button. But
right. Yeah. The retry button is, I hope your memory card is working.
Right. But yeah, no, I think they made magic too powerful, or maybe not even so much that, because I optimized a lot of my strategy. I think they just made physical attacks too weak. They don't give you enough option. It's the 3.5 D&D problem where wizards rule the show, and there's nothing you can do about that. And the fighter might do a lot of damage, but he's not going to be able to do that.
It's the growth curve, right? So like, fighters grow linearly, mages grow exponentially, so there's a certain point where you just have to cross over because the damage output is that big a difference.
Yeah, because like at the beginning of the game, when you give Victor the clone rune, for the beginning to late middle of the game, he's really good.
Sure.
And then you get Crowley with his stupid Cyclone rune that damages and heals everything at the same time.
Yeah, he gets his life spell, as it were.
Basically.
But it's cool. And I want to kind of segue a little bit now. Like, there are useful characters. Like, you went the magic route. When I played this many, many years ago, I went sort of a hybrid-y route. I think we did the same thing with giving Cleo a healing solution. I used Valeria more because I thought she was a natural upgrade over Victor, because it was the same sort of, like, rune attack every round, but in her case, it wasn't every other. She didn't get...
she didn't get unbalanced.
Unbalanced by it, right.
And if Victor wasn't forced into my party, I probably would have done the same thing. The Falcon Rune is good in every game it's in.
But you knew Victor had to be a certain point. You knew Pan had to get to a certain, like... Yeah,
no, so like, this was very much not anything close to a first-time playthrough.
Right.
Like, and this is indicative of how I run the games that I want to play for the channel is... I like showing good strategy, and I like showing off kind of like everything I can. Mm-hmm. And I also play these. I play these games on screen like I play them at home. I try to be as efficient as I can. And I try to like get the most reasonable amount of power with the least amount of stress involved.
Yeah, like we skipped the part where you can grab like the experience or the gold rune.
Yeah. You can do that at the start if you want to, but it's just I think you don't need either of them.
Sure.
Maybe the gold one.
But. No matter what you're taking party-wise, whether you're taking party A or B, and like it's more or less efficient, it's still viable.
Yeah. I mean, if you take a whole bunch of victors, as it were, then you better bring some mega medicine, but you can make it work.
Yeah, it's. I think that's the nice thing, especially with the way the experience works in the game, and the way it kind of very sharply curves you into about as strong as you're supposed to be for the area you're at, as long as you kill some stuff in the area and you don't run from fights.
Right.
So that works really well. It's neat to see gold always kind of being useful.
Yeah, that's something that rarely happens in games. Like, once you hit like late middle of the game, you have enough money at that point to buy everything you could possibly want. Even in Final Fantasy VII, like, chocobo racing is not, chocobo breeding and everything is not cheap. Mm-hmm. But if you sell an all materia that's mastered, you have enough for that and then some anyway, so it still doesn't matter.
It's the whole, like, finding enough gold sinks in a game but the gold things have to be valuable enough that players want to participate in them, right? You have to get
Yeah.
something sufficiently valuable out of it, but at the same time, you don't want that thing to be so valuable that it unbalances your game. And I think this is where the 108 characters things comes really, really handy.
Yeah.
Is having all of these additional potential gold sinks that are still valuable is really, really cool.
Sure. But you're also not required to do all
Right.
of them.
It's just
like
available.
if you can play the way I played it, and just do your main 6, just outfit those guys.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to outfit the other like 70 characters you can take into battle, man, knock yourself out. You do you. I won't, but that's
Yeah, so there's a slight reason to do that. The sequel, Suikoden 2, can consume your save from
Yes.
the first game.
Yes, you can load your save from the first into the second one and get some bonuses out of it.
Right, so some of your characters, based on how far they've been leveled up, can get some goodies, can be stronger when you originally get them. And then your main character, we mentioned this in the playthrough, their first letter migrates.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure it was a bug that did that.
Yeah.
I want to say I looked it up at one point, but this was a long time ago. Yeah, so the first time I ever played the game, like I was 12, and when I was 12, I named all the main characters after me because I was that jackass.
Mm-hmm.
So when I bring in Richard McDole from the first game, it becomes Rick Dole.
RC Dole.
Yeah, RC Dole, which no, that does not work.
Radio-controlled banana.
Pretty much, man.
Yeah, so
Royal Crown Dole.
it's a really cool idea. It's sort of a goofy thing, but I guess it works out nicely. If you do Morpheus McDole, then it becomes McDole, and
Right, which is exactly why I did that in this game, because one, they don't give you his real name.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a button combination you can do at the start to
get
the
tier.
default name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you can do this. I know there's 1 and 2 where you get the main character's name that way, because that's another silent protagonist sort of tabula rasa character that you can imprint yourself onto.
Although you don't get them early on. Or the main character from 2 you do. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of, like, because you can stumble on tier.
Yeah, there's a side quest kind of like the late middle of the game. I don't know, it's actually like right in the middle where you can go through and you can find, well, now that we've revived him, you can find Gremio and you can find Tyr, and then like if you do that whole side quest, it's actually really cool. You get like, a whole bunch of cool cutscenes with a lot of the characters from the first game, and only like 2 of them have portraits, but that's okay.
It's a cool callback. And for a game like this where there's enough characters you might get attached to some, it's neat to see that gets thrown out.
Yeah, a lot of the ones that have major roles in the first game come back. Like Humphrey is back, and he has a major role. Spoiler, but Flick and Victor are back, and they have major roles. You see LaPont again, he has a portrait. Gremio and McDole are there. Apple is back. Sheena is back. There's a lot of return characters in the second one, and they are 108 stars again, most of these characters.
So in addition to getting all the characters, like just being a fun collecting type thing, and there's ending consequences for that too, there's sort of something fun about watching their impact on your team because, like we mentioned, they're not all fighting characters.
Right.
Your base gets a lot of things.
Oh, yes.
You're based in Lake Turan, which is like the best analogy I could think for the Suikoden series, for if someone needs an analogy for this, is sort of like Elder Scrolls, where different versions of the game take places in different parts of what is the same world.
Yeah, like different countries or continents.
Right, like the first 3 games take place in the northern continent, but like in different parts of it, and then the 4th game's in the oceans south of that, and then the 5th game's in like the Queendom.
Like even further south of the ocean, yeah.
Right, but it's all sort of one contiguous world, so to speak. But for the first game, as you're grabbing more and more people, you're getting your bathhouse, you're getting your painter's room, you're getting your shops, like item shops, fortune tellers.
Yeah. And that's probably like the most mechanically useful part of the character recruiting in terms of building your house. I mean, yeah, there's a ton of things like the bathhouse and you got your inn that you also get with the cooks. That the cooks don't actually do anything for you in the first game, although they do in the second. And yeah, like getting those shops is just useful as all get out, because those shops also carry every item that you found throughout the game, or every item from other shops that you can buy.
Right.
Are all listed in those shops.
Or the sell to clear out your inventory since you have the limited inventory space,
right.
Or rock to swap things in and out to manage your...
Having a little stash at your house is also damned useful.
Yeah.
Especially for a lot of the things that you just can't sell for some reason.
And these mechanics like work really well as game, not just video game mechanics, they work well as game mechanics. We borrowed like a half dozen of these ideas for the tabletop campaign we were playing for a few years.
Oh yeah,
because like these are things that just work well. They're conveniences, but they're thematic and they're built around justifications. These things happen because there are people that are working hard to make these things happen.
Yeah, we were playing our Pathfinder campaign. We met somebody useful. All right, cool. Stick him in the tower. He's our armorer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this guy knows how to get things. He's our item shop guy.
Right. Yeah, the appraiser became one of the favorite characters in the group, just not only for the comic relief of the stuff he was doing, but the fact that it was such a pain to constantly go get pearls and appraise stuff.
Right, especially when the diviner of the group lost his wizard powers, so now we just have to pay $100 to this guy, and he'll tell us exactly what the item is.
Yeah, it's just helpful stuff. Not necessarily as helpful. The story is themed around two major hooks, and the first one's the 108 Stars of Destiny, and we've kind of talked about that. And the second one that's worth going into is the 27 True Runes.
Yeah.
There's sort of a Faustian deal about those. The idea is that they're really, really powerful, but they come with some sort of price.
Yeah, so like the two... So I mentioned it a bit briefly during the game, how there's sort of 3 tiers of runes. There's like tier 1, which is like your fire rune. We'll use the fire rune, for instance, here. Tier 1 is the fire rune. Tier 2 we picked up from, I think Alan was the guy that we took with us.
Yes.
He had the rage rune, which was the level 2 fire rune. And you can see it kind of shuffled off the lowest level spell and put everything down a spot and gave you a new 5th spell, which was like ultra powerful.
Right.
And then there's the true runes, and in the elemental one, it takes those same 3 spells and it shuffles off the second weakest one and gives you a new ultimate spell.
So now you basically have the levels 3, 4, 5, and 6 spells.
Yeah. And Suikoden 3 was really weird in that regard, and I'll mention it later if we have time. But yeah. So the first thing is that you get really powerful magic. The second thing is, I believe, with the exception of one of the true runes, every holder of the true rune is immortal in terms of they no longer age. They no longer die by expiration.
Right.
They can only be killed.
Yeah.
But they still die in other normal ways, but they don't age anymore.
Hence 300-year-old
15-year-old Ted,
Lady Windy chasing after 300-year-old Ted.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Who still looked 14 or 15 or however old he was when he first got the rune.
When he got stuck with it. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, so with the exception of like one, I think every rune has some sort of ill effect. The Soul Eater
eats your best friends.
Basically, yeah. It gains power from basically ruining your life, right. More or less.
Which is, it's just kind of from a story perspective, a neat thing to think about. Most stories were like, you are the hero, here is your burden.
Yeah.
Suikoden's like, have two. It's buy one, get one on burdens. You can have the Liberation Army and the Cursed Rune.
But wait, there's more.
Right?
Call now and receive. Yeah,
but we're not done yet. You get to kill your dad.
Exactly.
Right? It piles it on you in this
now
game.
with that, and this is like a good note towards the series as a whole, the curses that you're saddled with, they do an excellent job of narrating that, of presenting that to you. Like the curse of the runes in the second one is that there's 2, and that the holders of those are destined to clash with each other forever, basically, until one of them wins.
Even if they're best friends.
Which, they may or may not be. We'll maybe get to that next season.
Maybe. We'll have to see how much bandwidth we have.
I'm not promising anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, they present that really well. The third game, I don't remember what the curse was. There was a lot going on in that game. It was really like the third game was weird. It was more about the villain than it was the heroes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, big time.
Huge time.
Speaking of curses, one of the reasons I love when we run these games, we run them on the original hardware, is you get the original hardware experience.
Oh Lord.
And we had the original hardware experience in spades with this. I mentioned it in the
semi-original hardware. We used a PS2
we did play with the PS2 instead of a PS1, but our PS2
died just the same.
Burned out, like on our first or second day of recording. We had 1 or 2 moments where we were afraid the memory card had gone on us, and anyone who's played PlayStation RPGs knows the fear of a corrupt memory card.
Well, I mean, anyone who's played an SNES that had a battery save
Sure.
on there, like, what happened to my saves?
Yeah, same idea.
I was at the final boss. Where are my saves?
And then, on top of both of those, we had the director issue with the performance brand controller,
God.
where we were convinced like something was wrong with our save or wrong, like what's going on, the game's messed up, the dialogue boxes aren't showing up,
Right,
we can't get through the fights.
we didn't show all of it, but we went through that sequence like 4 times
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to figure out what was going on. Like, why is this battle so screwy?
The relief in my voice when we figure out it's the performance brand controller and controller port 2 is not staged. There's nothing artificial about that.
No, we did not have to scrap, like 60 episodes of what was up to that point a great Let's Play.
Yeah.
We got to keep it. We just had, 5 minutes of what the hell, man.
Right. So that was, I guess, sort of a fun reminder of you never know what you're going to get, but it was...
A fun reminder of don't buy bootleg, people.
Oh, yeah.
Just shell out the extra $15, get the actual DualShocks.
And the DualShock controllers are so great, why would you betray them?
I don't know.
I don't know how that even ended up in my collection, truthfully.
You might have just gotten it like tangentially from somebody who left it.
It could be, yeah.
Like somebody brought it over to play Twisted Metal with you and then left it with you.
Yeah.
This is your burden to bear now. It's a 3-for-1. You get the Liberation Army, the Cursed Rune, and the Performance Pro controller.
In the winter, the Mad Cats migrate to warmer climates.
Meow.
So, before we get into anything else, some names to mention for the series. First one I mention, because we just have a habit of loving game music, the composer, I believe it's Miki Higashino.
Yeah, I'm not sure the pronunciation. I think it would be Higashino, but
right.
The point is...
A 20-year vet of Konami who has a pretty great track record. The Gradius series... I believe it was the Nintendo TMNT, sort of like
I think it was the SNES one.
Yeah, which was, I guess, on the Ultra brand label, technically.
Right.
Contra 3 for the SNES, Vandal Hearts, and then this series.
Yeah. I don't know if she did the whole series. I know she did 1 and 2, and the reason for that is she actually retired in, 2007?
Yeah,
something
I think
like that.
2006, 2007, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she might have been involved with 3, but I'm not certain.
Yeah, Suikoden 3 was what, like 2002, 2003-ish?
I think so. I was in high school when it came out, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
But yeah, no, 20 years with one company is unheard of.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Across the whole world. I mean, unless you are Miyamoto or Iwata or...
Right. An irreplaceable asset.
Right, like if it's like your brand that you started, that's fine. But like if you have like a sound tech who hops onto one company and then gets brought in to compose for a game and then they stay with that company for 20 years, that's impressive.
Sure.
I would never do that.
And it's neat to me from a range perspective because I can hear the similarities in like Gradius games and Turtles.
Yeah.
And even to a lesser extent like Contra 3.
You can all sort of like layer each of those over each other, and it would almost sort of fit.
Right, but Suikoden's music is very much its own thing.
Right, no, you wouldn't take the theme from Necklord's Castle and put it over a Gradius 3 stage. It just wouldn't work.
No, or like the heartfelt sort of guitar,
yeah,
that you have when
the somebody important died song.
It's the sad theme, right? They're great tracks, but they are very sort of like unique to the series. They don't feel like they've been pulled from something.
Yeah, it's very clear that she went into a different sort of well of inspiration for this one, and I couldn't be happier because if I went through a dungeon and I had Gradius music, I wouldn't be upset, but I would be a little jarred.
Right.
It
might work for like a Phantasy Star game.
Oh yeah,
where it's
definitely
supposed to be sci-fi and going to but this is based on 14th century Chinese fiction. So.
Right, and it looks very much like it, with the exception of elevators.
Right. Yeah.
the one technical thing that's like, this doesn't really work.
The secret 109th Star of Destiny is just one very tired person at the end of a pulley system hidden on another floor. He sees them press the number, like a little toggle appears, and he's pulling the cord.
Yeah, he's a package deal with Sergey, the guy who actually made our elevator.
Nice.
She did a fantastic job, especially so in the second game. The second game is home to some of my favorite music in all of the game's soundtrack library. Mm-hmm. I think one of the best boss battle themes of all time when you fight spoiler character. Later on, you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and I will do the second game for the channel eventually, but so I'm not going to spoil too much.
It's not if, it's when.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. It definitely for season 4, if not season 3. is my plan for that.
Second name to mention is the character designer artist. I think it's Junko Kawano.
I think so.
This was her first game with Konami. It was she kind of was, I guess not so much co-lead, but her and the main developer for this were sort of, and I'll mention him later, were the two like primary people on this.
Yeah, from what I saw from what we were reading a little bit ago, that it's like these two people were kind of pulled out of whatever pool of workers they were in and thrown together and said, "Here, we need you to make a game."
Yeah, the director was in QA and was like, "Hey, we're gonna need a game for the system. Like, can you make us a game?" Like,
right.
Which is kind of, for a first game is impressive. More impressive given the sheer workload that the character designer had to. For
Junko Kawano, she will forever be like a goddess of effort.
So 108 characters, unique characters with themes and backgrounds and stories and appearances and the portraits to reinforce those appearances. And then on top of that, there's sprites for movement and attacking.
Yeah, and they're not like the same 4 sprites for everybody. Like we showed them, like there's a lot of like orthogonal turns that characters do, or there'll be like kneeling motions or just other things that you don't normally see them do, but they made up these extra special sprites.
8 directions, because they have the diagonals when they're fighting and like the orthogonal directions when you're moving around. And then on top of that, a lot of the custom sprite work, the stuff with Hux and the stuff with
like raising the sword and declaring your thing, and
or Gremio, like kneeling next to Gremio's cloak,
right? And there was like multiple frames of animation here, so that's a lot of sprite work involved.
Yeah.
Every time they do these things, it's like it's not just he's standing and he's kneeling. There's like 4 different steps in between that all takes a lot of work to do.
And that's not even talking about like the enemies and the bosses, and you have to do all of that stuff.
Right, yeah, because like it was Windy and Barbarossa. They had character sprites and special sprites. They had portraits. They had all these things going on.
Yeah, plummet mode. Right, so they had a lot to do.
The billowing cape at the end, man, that was some grade A sprite work.
Oh sure. So definitely wanted to do that shout out. And then finally, Yoshitaka Murayama, the developer here.
Yeah.
This was also his first role coming out of QA for Konami.
It's like being a rookie, having at your first at bat and then hitting a grand slam. It really is
against a major league pitcher. For a team that is known for being very high pressure.
Yeah, like it's like who sucked in baseball this year?
Oh gosh,
I don't know. It's like a rookie for, I don't know, the Mets or something.
Sure, yeah, the Mets had a pretty tragic season.
Going up against, we'll say, Mariano Rivera and hitting a grand slam.
Yeah, that does not happen often.
No.
So this was an attempt to sort of make an RPG series to get into the same competitive league as like Square and Enix, who were still separate at the time.
Right, which did not happen right away.
Yeah,
but we can talk about that in a second. Unless you want to talk about it now.
No, it's no, you're right. Like the game did well, but it didn't blow up immediately.
Right. Like it really kind of had some lackluster reception. I mean, the people who played it thought it was good, but it didn't. I don't know if it was because of the marketing team or if they didn't have any sort of commercial outreach the same way that Square and Enix had at the time. But this game's success was almost entirely due to just word of mouth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at first blush, when you look at this game, 3D was the thing. It had been the thing for a couple of years now. It was definitely the thing on PC, and it was becoming the thing on consoles.
Right.
And this was a 2D RPG. And it was a 2D RPG that, especially when you look at like the opening cinematics, looks kind of grainy.
Yeah.
Right? And it's very easy to write this off as, oh, this should have come out for the SNES. Like when you take a first blush glance at it.
Yeah.
Now, it's a much, much deeper game, and if you spend the requisite hours to get into it and discover how much fun it really is...
Yeah, and it's not that many. It's like really once you get past crazy, you start to think, oh, wow, there's a lot to explore and uncover here.
Yeah, and that's because I think the things that make this game endearing are the things that are at the core of what make an RPG experience good. Great plot, likable characters, diverse cast of characters, interesting story with sufficient divergence of the plot throughout, a certain amount of player control, multiple endings, sort of a strategic or tactical element where you get to play with numbers somehow,
Yeah.
collectathon effect type thing as well.
Rewards for the collectathon
Right.
effect as well, like
Benefits.
incentives to really explore the game.
And all those things kind of come together to make a good RPG experience. The visuals are nice, and the visuals can get people to get excited for the game or buy it off the bat.
Right.
What makes the game strong in the long run is that other stuff. It's that underlying, support structure that really makes it appealing. And this is something that Square's been fighting for years as they've gone more and more cinematic, and people have debated, like, is this good? Is this bad? Have they lost some things? Have they gained some things?
It doesn't even really need to be a debate. All you need is graphics. They matter, but they don't define a good game.
Right.
Suikoden 2's graphics, they're basic, they're 2D, they're simple, but the game itself was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Ready Auto Stories was a pretty game. It was terrible. Absolutely god-awful.
Just a quick over the shoulder to make sure, like, the staff isn't in the room with us. But I think we're okay.
Hear them cracking their knuckles in the background.
Waiting outside, River City Ransom style.
Although it's funny because that was also a fairly similar game in terms of having that many characters to recruit, although it was done by Tri-Ace and Enix, so it was a different sort of...
Who have done stuff I've enjoyed.
Yeah, like Star Ocean.
Right, which
which is
it's another thing that's,
game.
yeah, at some point before I die, we'll film.
Oh god, that's going to be like a season-long thing.
John Riggs actually got me a copy of the original Star Ocean.
Oh, nice.
He made acquired a repro for the SNES, and that runs great, so.
Very nice. And I think you and I both have second story copies somewhere.
So, just briefly mentioning here, Konami having the reputation it does. This game comes out in the mid-90s, and Konami is still kind of one of the, like, height of its powers game developers, right? Right. And...
it's probably like my favorite era of Konami, because there was a point when they definitely just fell off, and I sort of never heard from them again.
Yeah. But Murayama stays on through just about the end of Suikoden 3. He drops out of the company shortly before it's released, and his name is, because of company policy, taken off of the credits for that.
Hashtag a Yoshitaka Murayama game.
Right. Tower Stranding. But it's interesting to note because the effort that goes into these, the sheer labor required in developing a game, puts a stamp on that. It's a personal thing. You can't really fully escape that. You can't sanitize an experience. You can take a name off of the credits, right?
Yeah.
But when you are playing something like in that ilk. And the difference between Suikoden 3 and 4...
night and day.
Is night, right? Because 4 was the game, when I played it, that chased me off the series.
Right.
Which
is a shame, because I loved 5.
Yeah, and having not known or understood what was going on, not having that context, right? It leaves you wondering, like, okay, well, I wonder what happened, or I guess maybe this one just isn't fun anymore, or, like, maybe this was only good on PS, like, now, because it was PS2.
Yeah. It does make you think other things. You start kind of questioning the enjoyable experiences you've had, and you don't need to. It was just one bad entry in an otherwise good series.
A good series that is, unfortunately, it seems like defunct.
I think I have to come to terms with it now. I've wanted a Suikoden 6 for the longest time, and I just don't think it's happening.
Yeah,
mostly considering Konami doesn't give a damn about video games anymore, anyways.
Was the 2012 one DS or PSP? I think it was PSP. I think the last one that came out.
Like the repro of 1 and 2.
Might have been. I just think the last Suikoden release was a 2012 release.
That might have been Tierkreis.
Might have been. I'll put it here on the bottom
sure.
for which game's the 2012 release. But we haven't had a release in the series since. And in terms of staff, it sounds like just about everyone that worked on the series is gone.
Right. So it's kind of like, where do we go from here? And the funniest thing is, too, what sucks most about that is that you've got people that have come together over this series. Like, it went from a cult following to like a cult explosion. There's scholars looking into like the location of these lands, and there's like full-on maps that people have drawn out of like how far apart these countries are, and like there's like timelines of things that you couldn't possibly know.
Sure.
That people have found of like when these people were born or when they died, or like other effects or other events that happened that aren't shown in any of the games.
And that is one of the sort of novel things about this, pun entirely intended. It's based on a real world fictional like story, but like a beloved real world fictional story. This is like history. It's the same way if we in the West were to have like a Robin Hood RPG.
Right.
And then people would be like, well, let's compare the books or like the real world locations and the things we know about this from like handed down literature and like the video game stuff, and we'll try to figure out where this happened or when that, it's the same idea, but for a different IP essentially.
Sure.
But and then there like the fan sites for Suikoden are amazing. Is it Suiko Source?
Suiko Source, yeah, is the big one that's been around for like a decade at this point.
Was just a treasure trove of knowledge.
Right. Yeah. Like if you have a question, you can ask me, or you can go to the website, and they just have absurd amounts of information for things that I also sometimes I'm like, how could you possibly know that?
Yeah.
Where is that stated? And maybe part of that comes from translations of the games that weren't released in America, but
and that's a good segue as well. This playthrough was started serendipitously. It was not intentionally done so. During the summer of Suikoden.
Yeah, no, that was just fate smiling on us, right?
Which
there.
it was like Game Dave and Jimmy Hoppa and a number of other, and I'll go ahead and I'll put up all the ones I'm able to find here that did Summer of Suikoden episodes. This was a number of YouTubers who all kind of decided like we're going to join in and do reviews of the games and play the game and just kind of celebrate and enjoy it. And it was cool to have it come out while that was going on.
Yeah,
if not,
definitely.
just to have the conversations with the people involved in that and sort of see the love that comes from those different like corners of the world.
That's what I was going to say. Is like it was cool just to get the people talking about it again, because it's just one of those forgotten series at this point that I don't think deserves to be forgotten. Not with how good it is, and for how much that goes into this. Like, if you on paper tell me that you're going to make a game with 108 recruitable characters, I'm going to laugh at you and say that that's a waste of time.
Oh, sure.
And yet, it works so well 4 out of the 5 times that you play it, and I think it's just this game does so much right, and I think it deserves every bit of praise it gets. And I really wish people were still playing it and like giving Konami a reason to get off their behind and do something with the series again.
Yeah. I mean, I was late to the PS1 party.
Right.
I didn't get mine until I was caddying at Lowe's Island in the late 90s and managed to get $200 on the 12th hole and bought a PS1 on the way home. But going back, like, I was very diligent because I'd grown up with RPGs. It was, like, my favorite genre from the console series. I'd played like other stuff like strategy games and some other
you love your Civ
and arcade stuff too.
Yeah.
You know, Gradius and Arkanoid, and but when it came to RPGs, like I was big into them. So when the late 90s hit and I didn't want to fall too far behind, I went back and I played Persona. I went back and played Wild Arms. I went back and played FF7 and FF Tactics, which I totally fell in love with.
Yeah.
But Suikoden was one of those ones I went through and played as well. And
you never played the second one, did you?
Actually, Skylar had it, and I watched Skylar play it, which was a lot of fun. So I had secondhand experience of that while it was still relevant.
Sure.
And then also like Tales of Destiny, and so like getting into the Tales series at that point too. This system is just replete with amazing role-playing games.
I have said it time and time again, and I will continue to do so. The PS1 was the RPG system. Other games that were massive and other genres came out for it. It had Metal Gear Solid. You really can't say, speaking of Kojima, you can't say that it was only an RPG system, but I consider it the RPG system because you just look at how much came out for this game.
Right.
You didn't even mention, like Breath of Fire 3 came out on there. Xenogears.
Oh, sure.
What was the other
Chrono Cross?
Chrono Cross, yeah. While not my favorite game, it's still a decent
big entry,
game.
yeah.
And a huge entry. It's a Chrono series. It's a Square RPG.
And that we're only, even at that point, talking about the stuff that got released here.
Right, yeah. And not even, and just like the mainstream stuff that got released here. There was a ton of random-ass games that got released. Beyond the Beyond was absolute trash, but it was an RPG on the PS1.
Yeah. And the PS2 had a lot of good ones, but I think the PS2 had so many good games in other genres as well. It wasn't necessarily as defined by RPGs the way the PS1 was.
Right. Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. Because I love a lot of my PS2 RPGs, too. I'm a huge Dot Hack fan. But but there was also just so many other things. I mean, I guess you would consider Kingdom Hearts an RPG too, but it's a very different.
Sorta.
It's like an action
Action
RPG.
over the shoulder, right? And then like I was big into the first 3 Atelier Iris games and the 2 Manakenia games.
Yeah, Jack and Daxter came out on the PS2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Twisted Metal Black came out on there. You had Dynasty Warriors was a big sell there.
Oh sure, yeah. I mean the PS2 is still to date about as I think it is, if not the best-selling console still of all time. It is way up there.
Yeah.
Its sales were massive in North America and overseas, and then there was a second wave where it was huge in Europe and then huge in South America. And
Because its competition at the time was the GameCube and the was it the original Xbox around that time, or was it?
It was the GameCube and the
Dreamcast.
Yeah, it was the well, the Dreamcast came out right before the PS2, and the PS2 basically nuked the Dreamcast.
Yeah.
But the original Xbox was out then as well.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and I think of those 3 systems, I consider PS2 the clear winner. Because GameCube was a fun system, and it has a couple of cool games on it, but nothing I think that overshadows everything else that came out for the PS2.
Yeah, not to get off too far, but like the GameCube reminds me a little bit of the Wii U. Great console, solid first-party titles, minimal support outside of first-party.
Right.
You can make a good collection for that system out of like 30 games and be done with it.
Yeah, and it's some of the best games for the GameCube were just collections of other games.
But for the early PlayStation consoles, there are hundreds of games that are just unreal for the system.
Right. Every single one of them are beyond worthwhile to play. It's like this. My backlog for PS2 is still like 40 games long, and these are all good games. Yeah. And that's the problem is like you know. This is why I hate growing up, man. You lose your time to sit down. Like, yeah, I'll spend 10 hours playing this game. It's like, but I need to go grocery shopping.
Yeah,
and,
when we're senior citizens, we'll have more time to make episodes.
So we just have to get to 65, and then we'll be grandpa gaming.
Yeah. I think that's about all I had on Suikoden.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, we've got the save saved, so hopefully all things considered we'll come back to the second at some point.
Yeah, and we should have a bonus episode up before too long here of we have a couple ideas I know we wanted to put out there and show some extra stuff on here.
Yeah, well no spoilers. It'll be up on the channel soon enough, and we'll have that up there too.
But just on a personal note, back when I first had the idea to start doing Let's Plays, and this was years even before we started doing Ion Gaming, Suikoden was actually the first game I ever wanted to run. So it was really just kind of a fulfillment thing for me to be able to do this and to do it in a style and a manner and in a playthrough, like a quality that I wouldn't have been able to do on my own. And it came out better than I could have hoped. And I'm really glad that I actually finally got to do this one. Like, this is just something I've been holding in my pocket for a long time, and it just felt good to kind of get it out there.
Yeah, no, it's like that same catharsis I had playing through Secret of Mana, right? It's you wanted to define the experience a certain way. You wanted to show it to people, wanted to sort of explain it. But then through the LP process, you get the sense of like what it's like to play the game, not just here's what happens in the game.
Right.
And that's always kind of been what we shoot for here.
Right. And having a couch co-pilot is always a good thing, even on a single player game. It's fun just to have someone there to kind of bounce the fun off of, because we never would have sung about Robert's Brand T if not for my co-pilot here.
Stuff.
Yeah, we wouldn't have laughed about some dude's house being burnt to a frickin' crisp.
Or the summer watermelon sweater.
Like those are all things that like you play through these games. You play through any game really, and like you'll see like the watermelon pattern summer sweater by yourself, and you'll kind of chuckle to yourself and then move on and never think about it again.
Yeah.
When you have a friend here, when you have somebody playing with you, you guys can stop and laugh about it for a while because it's just.
It gets contextualized. It becomes part of your lexicon. It just becomes this thing that the experience is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, a lame tuxedo was a lot funnier with a friend.
So, I think that is it for this.
Yeah, I think that's everything I've got as far as this is concerned as well. If you haven't played it and you watched this, well, the whole thing's spoiled for you now, but go play it, man.
It's still worth it. Try a different party comp if you want to mix something up. Try some different combo attacks. If you are feeling particularly vindictive, don't bring Gremio back. Whatever you feel like doing, but there's a lot to be found in this experience, and it's definitely worth the drive.
Yeah, and luckily, this one is not so hard to come across anymore. If you have a PS3, you can still get it on the online store, on the PSN store, for like $5.
Do you know if the PS4?
I don't believe the 4 has it, so you still
Okay.
have to go to PS3, or you can get the PSP re-releases of 1 and 2.
Right.
So yeah, plenty of modern day ways to pick this one up. So you have no excuse. Go drop your money.
Yep. I mean, even the PS1 CD for this is not unreasonably
No,
priced.
I think it's like 30 or 40, something like that.
Which for a PS1 RPG nowadays
Yeah.
is actually a pretty good price.
I got Suikoden 2 for $20 at Walmart. It is now worth about 130.
I was gonna say that's still one of the best snags ever to get that at a reasonable price. Although it came down a bit after it was released on
Sure,
PlayStation
because it was no longer
download.
scarce. It was now just a collector's item. It's still a very expensive collector's item.
Went from need it to play to collectors will want to have it.
Yeah,
Right.
and then it's still scarce enough for collectors to have to pay that
Sure.
that exorbitant fee.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that about does it for me on this one. I can't even tell you how much fun I had with it.
Yeah. No, I think we all did, and I hope you did too. Listening to this and watching the series through. As always, thank you so much for sticking around and being part of this, and we will catch you next time.
See you guys.